I get to giggling so much because we get the privilege of like coming into the space after listening to the piece, and the people, my guests, have no idea. I did not prep them for that. I just threw them into it, so I get
Just,
to see
I
their
like you just
faces.
dropping bombs on people, and it's like, you could have sent the words too, please.
I will send you the words too. We get to talk to one of my favorite sisters that I didn't even know I had across the seas, and I was blessed to find and come into family with through my sister Sayida, who's also been on here. So now you get to meet Rene,
Put.
which I'm so excited about because, and I'm gonna, y'all will hear the intro about Rene and Rene's work and what Rene does in the world. And also just immediately, as soon as I heard Rene's accent, I was like, oh, home.
Family, that's what it is.
Family. I
Family.
love it so
Yeah.
much. And she's cooked me curry. So, it's like lifetime now for us,
Well, you're trapped now though,
I-
because we have this thing we call when somebody make left hand dumpling for you, they have you for life.
for life.
So you didn't realize you
I-
came and eat curry and you get tied up.
I had the feeling, no one pulls out the big pot without some sort of,
I put a
plan.
little juju in it. That's correct.
So there's so many places we can go from the poem to our conversation, but I think there is something special because even one of my other guests, Akila, her family, and she's from Jamaica. So I didn't even realize consciously that this conversation about sovereignty had so much diasporic Caribbean energy in it. But I do think when I really think about it, even for myself, when I visit that part of the world, when I visit the Caribbean, when I visit Panama, when I visit these places where, Afro-Antillean, Afro-Caribbean people have touched, I feel a different type of sovereignty. Like
You feel home.
I feel home. And I feel like a right to that home, which is a very different feeling, of course, than I feel in the US, though I have heard some Black Southerners describe a similar feeling. And I wonder if it's also through the land, through this deep relationship with the land and the environment around them, Like even in the poem, there's so many descriptors that are related to nature, the sea salt and the types of fruit that we get from nature and sugarcane, and like how much our environment supports our sovereignty or does not, depending on the environment that we're in. And look at that face. Why are you laughing at me, Rene? Gone, sister.
No, I'll tell you, I think the word delicious is what coming up for me, right? Because when I think of home and the sovereignty there, I love how the poem talked about all them delicious things. And one of the things with coming here to the States after being home is that feeling of a loss of sovereignty. You understand? And it's been an experience, and it's coming to me now in terms of the food as a loss of my sovereignty. Because coming here and having to eat this American Yankee food has actually been the biggest hardship for me. And it's the place where I feel the deepest loss. And you don't have a choice, right? You have to choose this organic business. I don't understand the concept of organic. I don't understand how a vegetable that grow out the ground is not organic. You're supposed to pick the thing and eat the thing and cook the thing, and then it's just supposed to be. And I lost a lot of freedom in the food. You're talking about sugar cane and all this. I listen to me, all the seasons, and that's the next thing too here. Nothing seasonal, it's all forced. Everything it's forced, ripe, forced season, forced fruits. Sovereignty has been lost to me here in my food. And I don't know. When you home and you have a backyard full of fruit trees, you
Right.
feel for mango, you go outside and you pick a mango. You can't sleep, you go and pick a sapodilla leaf or a soursop leaf.
And
You make some
soursop.
tea, right? And then you put that in your teacup and you fall asleep. And there's a piece to that, knowing your land and your land knowing you,
Yes.
right? The piece where, you know, you invited me to your beautiful garden, your magical, mystical place, right?
Yes.
And we had talked about me feeling not rooted
Yeah. Yeah. Disconnected.
and drifting here, right? And until I had that conversation with you, I didn't realize it's because I missed the actual soil.
Yes.
I didn't realize that is what it was. I didn't realize that when I was doing my spiritual practice and trying to ground, I actually was going into alien ground and I wasn't able to find source anymore. That's how I knew. And my source has breadfruit root,
Yes.
and cocoa root, and mango root, and
Dukkha.
all these things. Yam. Yeah, listen to me. This thing about how they talk about this candied yam business is the biggest lie I ever come across. The first time I was here for this Thanksgiving business and they say candied yam. Now, you know what proper yam look like, eh?
Yes.
Big and gray.
Yes.
And I thinking to myself, well, who could candy that yam? It's so
Who could get
not
it?
candyable. And then I realized it's sweet potato.
Yeah. Like
It
you were
is
like,
just
what is this?
big sweet potato talk about candied yam. I say, but
No, I so for Rene home is Trinidad. And
Correct,
you know,
right?
we share so many. Panama is the same. We always talk about this, like you can drop anything in the soil and it grows. Anything. People don't starve because if you got a machete, you can eat. If you could pull something from the earth, you're fine. The medicine is right there. You just go outside, you have a stomach ache, like you were saying, if you need tea. And there's something so now that I've been tapping back into, you know, my ancestral home in Panama, my ancestral home in Sharm, I feel a portion. I can't feel what you feel because you got to be raised in it, you know? When I go back, what I feel is a remembering from a cellular place, but you know it from this life, this body, this time, you know?
Right.
And I find it very challenging. It's like probably my number one challenge right now, Rene, is maintaining my awareness and my connection to my sovereignty in this environment. And you feel it so distinctly. The more you go in and out, or the more, especially, I mean, you can just travel, you know, we can travel and you can see different things and places. But when you feel a connection to places that you travel, like you feel like I've been here before, my people have been here before, that kind of rooting is, I don't know. Sometimes you know, we might have a conversation, we might sound all over the place, but that's how it feels. You know, it feels like, I don't want to say sometimes like, can I be sovereign here? Like I know all is possible because I know what spirit can do. I also know earth is spirit, right? So people of this earth, people who know the spirituality and the power of this earth and this natural world, it's not lesser than the ethers or the stars. It's like, it is actually another interpretation version of it, right? So, you know, soil is stardust, you know, so
Correct is right. Yes.
you know, so I sit with sometimes a lot of, I've been sitting with lately, like, how can I offer myself more compassion for that struggle? Because it's not that I'm not sovereign, or not that I'm not trying to stay connected to that sovereignty. It's that I'm in an environment that is not conducive. So for example, the way I said, we can drop a seed in Trinidad, in Jamaica, in Panama, and it'll just, whoosh, right? I don't feel that way here in America. I feel like I feel like if I drop the seed, I don't know that that soil has the nutrients. I don't know that it has and will support if the ecosystem has been, maintained, or a relationship with that environment has been maintained in such a way that will ensure that the earth even responds when I drop a seed back, right? Because you'd have to, like you said, you have to be in relationship with the land for that to happen. The reason those lands do what they do, grow what they grow, is because the people are in such deep relationship with them. But here, we put trees in parking lots for decoration, separated from each other by concrete.
Well, I'll tell you something though too, Thea, right? The soil is part. But then now it is the energy of the humans existing on the soil.
Yes. Oh.
Right? And so, like, people who know Trinidad know that we have Carnival, greatest show on earth.
Greatest show.
And I'll tell you, there is a palpable energy in Trinidad that will thrum during Carnival time. I mean, when I tell you, it don't matter which corner of the island that you are on. When it's Carnival time, that shit, it coming up through the soles of your feet and it reverberating through your soul. They say that how Trinis are the happiest people on earth, but it's because we have these times where we just let loose.
Yes.
Right? Because I tell you, in the civilized world, it's this pressure cooker. And Carnival and things like Carnival, that's the valve on it up, and every now and then you just let that pressure out. Good. But you see, I tell you, here in the States, where is your pressure cooker valve? Right? Where is that time of wild abandon? Where is that time when there is that interconnectivity where you feel this from going from the souls up to the heavens, really, right? And mind you, I'm not talking about mob rule or mob mentality, right? I'm talking about that deep soul shifting. We reach the core of the earth, and we've connected there, and all of us now start a dance. You see it?
Yes.
And I don't know, because we, in our spiritual practice, Sinai, we have this thing that we talk about called the seed and the soil. Right? And about holding context.
Yes.
Right? But I tell you, even on a environmental level, being contexted by the earth, being contexted by Gaia, Mother, Feminine, whoever, the goddess, whoever you want to call her, right? Being contexted by her is life blood, life giving, life shaping. And if it is that you can't have that, I don't think that you could be sovereign.
That's it.
I don't think you could be sovereign, because you're just a lost little child drifting.
But you don't know. See, you don't know until you come into contact with a sovereign being, or you don't know, or a sovereign experience, a land or water or something that brings you back into recognition or awareness of sovereign self.
That was you and Sham that first time. I tell you something though, right? It was like a light. No, a lie. It was like a volcano erupting, and it was magnificent to watch. Because I remember us on the plane going, and then I remember you that first time in the water when we went in the yacht, and then I remember you coming back, and then I remember it had a gap before I talked to you again. And the next time I spoke to you, I was like, but who is this soul that came back from Egypt?
Who came back?
Right? But I didn't realize all that time is that I didn't know your actual soul, and your real soul actually is who got unlocked there.
Yes.
And finally came back home, And I want you to think about this. You remember before I came, we only had heard about each other.
Yes.
But even in the hearing of each other, we had felt the connection.
Yes.
We had felt that spirit bond. And I remember that deeply. I remember knowing that I knew you.
Yes.
Right? And I knew you on this deep level. But then, you meet the person in the corporeal form, and then, well, of course you're gorgeous. So, I mean, that piece fit, right? But then now it's to see that transformation from you going to a place where you were able to root, right? And then now actually meeting you, who I had met in spirit, finally in body.
Yes.
So you see it?
Yes.
So that's,
and it's amazing how that first trip was with you. You had just got here, and basically within a few months we were all on a plane
going to Egypt
headed to Sharm.
To have that in, and mind you, you know, that Sharm trip is like an initiation of the soul.
Yes.
And you talk about the remembering, and you know, all of us are on that journey of remembering.
Yes.
But each of us has to seek that, but seek it where is the question.
Yes. So this is it, right? Because this is where I'm starting to play. And you know, we like to play.
We do like to play.
We like to play.
Correct is right.
This is where I was in a conversation with another group of women through our friend Clarinda, who does the matriarchal decolonizing business, a matriarchal business community. And it was a group of wonderful people on this conversation. And we were having this interesting conversation. And I don't know how it came up in this way, but essentially what I ended up saying, you know, I say a lot of things I don't remember because, you know, we spend half our time channeling. So we don't.
Listen, when you channel,
you catch it when you catch it, you catch it when you catch it, and if it's gone after that. So, but it was something along the lines of, you know, that the ancestors that were here before the enslaved ancestors came over, right? That because we know Africans were here before enslavement. The ones that what if, not even what I know is that without even knowing why they were doing what they were doing, just out of obedience to spirit, out of obedience to the land itself, those original people sold things in this land that the ones who came over enslaved would need at a certain point in time.
Right.
And because how else can you account for people coming to a whole different climate, a whole different land, and being able to grow things in that land, right? That they have no knowledge of outside of whatever their ancestors had planted. Now, mind you, they didn't even have to know at the time. The original ancestors didn't even have to know at the time that this was coming. What they had to do was be in divine timing with spirit, which meant, I think about this because to do that, you have to be wild and sovereign. Because you said to me, and I've quoted this so many times, I'm sure on this podcast, and this is the Rene I'm talking about when I've quoted this. So I finally brought her to you all. What looks psychotic to the world makes perfect sense to the universe, right?
Correct.
So when you think about those original ancestors going out maybe in the middle of the night and taking some random seed and planting it some random place and doing this little work that looks like, why are we doing that? But they're just doing what they're being told to do by spirit for something that may happen hundreds of years later, right?
Correct.
And same for those ancestors that came over later for us, right? But nowadays, when something in your spirit tells you to do something that may look crazy to other people, you are hesitant to do it because they've got us so controlled and boxed in and afraid to look different or do different, that when spirit is asking us to do something that looks wild or looks outside of the norm, we won't do it, which means we aren't sowing the things that need to be sown for the people coming after us. So when you talk about that pressure valve, all through the Caribbean, they got that pressure valve, you know, I know the Trinity one is special, you know, I know, but you know, New Orleans has, you know, Carnival, you know, I don't know another place. I mean, it has Mardi Gras, you know, but of course they have Haitian tradition and stuff like that there, right? So that's still some Caribbean tradition. Panama has Carnival, you know, all throughout.
You have Brazil, you have, and mind you, everywhere that we end up, we take Carnival. We realize that it have to have the pressure valve.
And also though, when I'm there, I feel like the other thing I feel from people is an understanding that life is meant to be lived.
Correct.
Not worked.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So, you know, I do find people who do interesting kind of wild things in these places, like, you know, and flow with the energy of spirit. My dad was telling us about this one guy who's never worked a job ever. And my dad's like, I don't know how he's living this way, but I tell you what, he never misses a meal. He always has a roof over his head. And he's so that's the only way of life he knows, is to
Right.
be that spirit will always provide. You know what I'm saying?
Spirit will always provide, but here's the other part, and this is one of the things I like to challenge people, right? Are you living in time or are you living in eternity?
You do the time thing. Go ahead, Renee. Tell him.
Right?
Do him like you do me about time.
No,
It's real.
I tell you, that construct of time is a very real and living shackle. All of our souls. You have to understand, we have to remember that we are divine downloads. All right. We are God's seed in corporeal form. We are eternal.
Yes.
We're eternal. And so what happens that every day that you get up and you look at that phone, or you look at
that time,
that this time thing is real, and somehow you could lose time or make up time or be on time.
Or there's not enough time.
Correct, because all there is eternity. And when you're living in spirit, you're living in eternity. And so what happens is that time will bend, it will lengthen, it will shorten, it will dance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But there's a different version of life that exists in eternity than it exists
I
in
agree.
time. And when we let go of time, and I'll tell you what's interesting, when I was younger, my dad was one of the only adult men that I knew that didn't wear a watch. He never wore a watch. And I remember asking him, he said, I can't wear something as heavy as time on my hands. Right? But I remember that just being one of those things, even when I was young, understanding that I didn't have to be a captive to time.
Yes.
Right? And I'll tell you, you're talking about the ancestors doing what everybody talks is crazy things.
Right.
Right? In this life that we're living here, right? I gotta go to school during a particular time in my life. I gotta get the job. I gotta get the house. I gotta get the husband and the wife. I gotta make the retirement plans. But everything based in this time. And so what happens? You're caught up in a maelstrom of illusion that don't exist.
Yes.
And then the opulence of eternity is lost to you.
And the truth about who you are is lost to you.
But you never knew who you were.
Right. Because you were always lost in the time construct.
Correct. Correct.
It's funny you say that, because I'm in a hotel. Now,
well, I was wondering about this nice fresco.
Isn't it? This is one of my favorite places to go because of this wall.
But you do realize that they're matching, right? Because yours.
No, I was just looking at that. We always do that.
Listen, we show up today, Gil. Because
we showed up in white. We were about to say, and we showed up in the white.
Listen, this was supposed to be a spirit conversation. Talk.
Oh, absolutely. But part of what I knew I needed to do, what I knew happened, because it happens, is I had slipped out of my eternity into time. I knew it because I felt like I was suddenly behind things and trying to control things by time and by efforting and by doing and, all this stuff. And so I told Mark, I said, I need to take 2 days to get back in sync with my own rhythm, because it doesn't move like this. But it's the difference between feeling like you're being, tossed through the river, like just tossed around by a river, and knowing you are the river. Right. That is the difference, right? And that is that concept of time. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is one of the ways they keep us from being sovereign and wild, is by telling us that our time is not our own, or that time even exists at all. Because if there is going to be any form of time, then everybody would have their own unique rhythm and time.
That's right.
Which goes back to the dancing and the time of year where you just dance, that you dance your own rhythm. So I can imagine if thousands of people on this island are dancing to their own rhythm, keeping their own time, how that would send ripples through the earth, through the soil, enough energy to feed and provide for those people for an entire year till they come back together and do that ritual again.
And we lose time during Carnival. And this is
I'm certain
people have to understand. Let me tell you something. During Carnival, to meet your band, you have to wake up at 6 o'clock because you had to put your paint, you had to get yourself right, you had to put your feathers, you had to look correct. You show up there in the morning at your band and you will go out in the hot ass streets and dance whole day, miles and miles and miles. Listen to me, you will run out them little Fitbit that it is wear on their hand. Run that shit out. And when the sun goes down and you look up and you are like, how is the day over? You imagine a collective of thousands of people losing time, as in completely just, it is like you're transported into a different vortex, a different dimension. And then what happens is that they take you and they bring you back.
Yes.
Right? Now,
yes.
let's talk about, and I go in biblical here, right?
Let's go.
It's one of them things, right? So you all remember when Moses take the Jews and they went out into this desert for 40 years. Right? And so they go, now you tell me what desert on this planet taking you 40 years to traverse. Oh, right? But you remember they're getting fed with manna from God. Right? And it was that God was trying to take them on this, is like that what they call it, dark night of the soul, that journey, right? We're doing Jacob's ladder here, going across that journey, right? And what happens now is that for me, that story, because of course the Bible is metaphor, right? But it is that they were taken out of time.
Out of time, into
they
a
were
plane.
Taken, that's right. Taken out of time, fed by God, taken on a journey of the soul, and then brought back, and then stepping into the promised land. Think that thought.
After feeding on nothing but manna from God.
Of course.
Of course.
Right? So you're going into initiation because they have so many things here on earth. If you have the eyes to see, and the ears to hear,
because it's
right?
all it's all here.
It's all here. But I tell you, we have to, because it's you taking the Egypt journey, going on the retreats that you're going to be taking people on, getting the people out of time.
That's it. Out of it.
That's
it.
On the journey.
So that's
so that they can come back into the promised land, which is, listen, the fruitfulness and opulence of your divine soul. That's what this thing is about.
That's the thing, right? Thank you. Because that's what I was going to get to. So for the only way, if you are not in an environment that believes in these things, that supports it, that cultivates it through ritual, whether that's dance or just relationship with the land itself, this is what I believe. Then we have to portal ourselves.
Yes, I like that.
We have to portal ourselves into the spaces that support our sovereignty and look for the opportunities to get to those lands as often as we can, because that is really, it's so interesting because, you know, this ain't no retreat. We ain't running from nothing on this trip. We're running to something.
Correct.
Right, we're running to something. That's the language, you know, that I think people understand. We're running to ourselves, and we're creating a portal, and we're taking people to open their mind and just remember, like when you go under that water and you see, oh yes, I don't know anything. I thought I knew everything before. I thought I knew who I was, what job I had, what relationship I wanted. I thought I knew, you know, what my life was going to look like in 5 years. And when I went in that water, I remembered, I'm not here to know. I'm here to experience. I'm here to experience, to see, to witness, to observe. If I'm lucky, I can taste a little bit. I can smell a little bit. I can hear a little bit, you know, and when you come back, you hear and feel things differently. I've said this, I think I don't remember if I said this on one of these episodes, but I went to the girls' school play. And, you know, I don't think it's a secret that most school plays can be pretty terrible. I mean, everybody's trying their best, but, you know, you just prepare yourself for the worst, you know. They actually did a really, really good job. These kids worked really, really hard. But there was this one in particular that she didn't have theater experience, from what I understand. And when they went up there, and whenever they opened their mouths, I knew they were channeling. Like, they weren't just acting as the character. they fully surrendered in some capacity and were able to like channel for whatever purpose that was. And there was this moment where they were singing and their movements were like, you could tell they weren't acting because their movements were way more subtle, way more gentle than, way more not even intentional. They just looked more natural, like organic,
Right.
organic. But then the light just shined on them a certain kind of way. And I remember sitting there feeling deep gratitude that I was able to be present and aware that that moment was happening. I'm alive. I'm alive and I can see this and I can hear this and I'm so grateful. And I've had moments like that ever since I came back up out of that water where I'm like in the middle of something I can stop and I can see a leaf falling and I can check out of time and pour to myself and be my eternal self, and that it could feel like an hour for that leaf to fall. And maybe it's been 10 seconds, but it's as refreshing as if I spent the entire day taking a nap or, at a spa, just that little bit of time watching that leaf fall. It's like, I love this thing you're saying about time because it's really about moving with time to learning how to portal and learning that that's what you are, but that's also what you can travel through in order to experience your sovereignty without feeling like you're fighting. Because I'll speak for me. I feel like I been too much energy on this soil trying to hear myself or I don't want to say protect my sovereignty, but like stay connected to it. When I'm not here, we've talked about this. I don't wear nothing.
It's
just
effortless.
It's the difference between being just lifted up, and then being thrown down to the ground and told, okay, figure it out, and I don't have to figure it out. I'm lifted up. I don't have to figure it out. And I have yet, we're this conversation is us kind of experimenting and playing with the idea of even portaling is like, oh, great. That is one way. And you can see it in our faces if you're watching the YouTube that there is nothing like being in spaces that don't require that kind of effort. And you get to fly to new heights because the weight and energy you use to just
exist. Listen to me. I'll tell you, the conversation that we're having is about disruption. Right? And I want everybody listening to really consider running away from home at some point in time. If home is here on this particular continent, run away from home, right? Run away from home and run back to yourself. Have an experience like what Thea had, and then realize that the culture shock is not you going there. The culture shock
is you coming back. That's it.
Because when you come back here and you realize the weighted boots that your soul has to walk with to be here, right? Then what happens now is the real sexy part, because the real sexy part is that when you come back and you recognize, then what happens is that you have to shift the space that you're in here because you didn't come back the same. So the thing now is that for you to be here, right? You have to, as she said, shape the shift of your own personal environment. And I'll tell you what Spirit did for me when I came here, because again, I studied here. So I've been in the States before for a lengthy period of time. It didn't make it any less interesting coming back, right? But what Spirit did for me this time around was that she gave me you guys. Well, you beautiful goddesses, let me put it right? But I came into a sisterhood. I came into a covenant because every one of us witchy, right? Everybody dealing in the magics.
Yes, everyone.
But I came into a a womb. I came into
Yeah.
a prepared womb. And I have to say that the reason that I have been able to stay plugged in, stay sane, stay seeing out of the illusion, stay just in the love, okay? Because that's the next thing. I mean, you know me, I am a loving,
Yes, you are.
a chuff, I come in for you, all the hugs and
Cuddle puddle.
listen, you understand. And so what happened though is that Spirit brought me into this womb of goddess love. And it's because that I came from Trinidad. I knew I was going to come here. Sayida had already kind of told me about all of y'all and stuff like that. And I am not going to lie to you. The trepidation for me coming to America was great. It wasn't about leaving home and leaving the family and the life that I was going to start here. It was that I have a television and I know what happens here. You understand?
Yes.
But because I was so tapped into spirit, and I had already been sending my spirit across the seas, right? To kind of come before me, so I have something to come into, right? She was able to now create the womb space for me to arrive. But then now I come here and you are here. Tamika is here. Sayida is here. This group of women that in maternal health is here. So you understand what it is I came to. I literally came into a womb.
Yes.
But see now, here's the thing. The people who are living disconnected or I want to say oppressed by the environment that they're in right now, understand, run away from home, reconnect. And then what happens is that send that version of you, that version of spirit back here ahead of you and let her prepare your version of a womb. And so that when you come back to this space, which is your home, right? You actually have a spiritual home and a space prepared for you. And so what happened? The people, the resources, the spaces, the experiences, the community, right? They will already be here waiting for you when you come back from your journey.
Yes. You know, before you got here, we had already saved you as our Rene in our phones. It was never just Rene. It was our Rene. In our phones. No, that's what I was pulling from what you were saying too, is that another outside of remembering that you are eternal and not within time, and that which means you have access to portal yourself into spaces and galaxies and places that do support your sovereign self, is that community piece. You know, I feel like every time I go to Sharm and come back, I'm recharged with the energy to transform the spaces. And that trickles into any work I'm doing, anything I'm doing, you know. So when you talked about that, I was thinking about the Black or the Brain. So in the midst of COVID, in the midst of racial uprising, I'm like, who wants to decolonize mental health? And these wonderful, quirky, amazing, talented, brilliant people came. And we talk about this all the time. We are the sort of rebels in our spaces. We've been loners in our spaces, like many people who are trying to live as a sovereign being in an oppressive nation, may find yourself being one in a space. But there are spaces like the Black or the Brain we've cultivated specifically so that we can pick up those individuals then create like that womb environment, like you were talking. In fact, the first year, we just took care of ourselves. And it was hard because we were so used, again, our roots have been grown in a place that says, go, go, go all the time. So our first instinct, everybody wanted to do something. What are we going to do? What are we going to build? And I remember when I was like, we're not going to build anything. We're going to be together. And we're going to get this nervous system under control so that we can relax and just breathe before we act, you know. And then we began to heal and notice how the white supremacy and the capitalism had invaded our bodies and made us feel restless. Even when we were saying this was a safe space, we were still behaving like we were in need of protection, like we were in need of, you know, all these things. And so when you can go away, you know, I remember that like the first couple of times I went away, like Panama, even before Sharm, coming back always felt very scary for me, you know. Part of what I've built into this model that we're going to be doing when we're away is how to come back home, like what
Correct.
that transition looks like.
And that's critical.
Yeah, it's critical because I already know by day, 4 or 5, when it hits 6 and there's more time, they feel, because they're still thinking in time, that time is shortening. That's my job to show them, no, this time is actually eternal. And what we've created in this portal is something you can tap into whenever you want. So when you go back and you're like feeling alone and you're feeling like the power of your sovereignty is being drained, you can project yourself back here.
Correct. Yes.
With all these women and all these people around you who are supporting you, and you can, and that is as real as whatever you are dealing with in your space currently. And I think this is so important. Ebony Janice Moore talks about this. We talk about, she puts it in the foreword for Blood and Bahadeke, where she talks about Toni Morrison and how Toni Morrison was talking about Zora Neale Hurston. How Zora Neale Hurston said, even the rocks have memory. And Toni Morrison said, spiritual memory is true.
Correct.
What I want you all to know right now is Rene and I are real people. We got real families. We eat real curry. We real people. And so when we tell you that these portals that we're talking to you about, these realms, are as real as whatever you are looking at right now, or whatever you are sitting in, and the only way that cannot work for you is if you doubt that it's as real as what you are currently in. So what helps me to maintain this, I tell myself everything my spirit tells me is true. If I imagine myself in water and on another continent, in another space, I am in that water. That is not imagination. That is not false. That is as real as me standing here talking into this microphone. And you have to know that, and you may have to know it against all odds, but that little bit Rene told me, I'm going to say it again to you all. She told me what looks psychotic to the world makes perfect sense to the universe. So now when I'm sitting here protecting my little bit of real against these illusions, what I say to myself is I must be on the right track because I know this shit looks crazy. But that means it must make perfect sense somewhere in the universe, because it looks like there's some, me taking these groups of people and like, even though people explain it to their family, hey, I'm about to follow this woman to,
the jungle.
I didn't even know existed. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't even know that space even existed. I had never heard of charm, so, but we do things that may look off to other people. But if you follow Renee's advice, which I have multiple times, I remind myself, oh, then that must mean this makes perfect sense to the universe. And if I want to make perfect sense to anything, it's the universe. I would rather make perfect sense to the universe than to make sense to the constructs that are keeping me bound.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So that's how you got to think about it. That looks psychotic to the universe. Why are they sitting there following in line and listening to those people tell them who they are, and listening to those people tell them what to eat, and listening to those people telling them what to wear? The universe is looking like, I don't understand. Like what you said, I don't understand what you're doing here. What's happening? Yeah. We want to flip that. I'd rather look bizarre to this construct and make perfect sense to the universe.
To the universe. That is, listen to me.
And that is how we maintain our sovereignty on this soil, Rene.
Listen, what I hearing you, and I tell you what, if we're going to have a shared fever dream, who dream you actually want to be dreaming?
That's it.
Whose dream you actually want to be dreaming? And I tell you, it's that thing. So I was raised Catholic. So there's this thing called cradle Catholic, which means that you're Catholic from inside the womb, right?
You were in a Catholic.
Listen, I sure I had holy water in that amniotic sac. You know what I'm saying? Catholic. But we have to remember that when I came out and I did the first communion and the confirmation, and I was going to church and I was all the fervor, and of course everything that comes along with Catholicism, right? There came a point where I think I probably read it in a book. Basically, it said the only reason you are the religion that you are is because you were born into it. And I realized that I did not choose that particular fever dream. I was born into that fever dream. But all the while I was there, I didn't feel like I fit there. In fact, no, I knew I didn't fit there. I knew that wasn't my paradigm. I knew that wasn't my spirit calling. I knew that while there were parts of it that gave me bliss of spirit, there were so many parts of it that just, I would hear it in catechism, I would hear it in school, and everything in me would say, but no, that's not what that is. And so every day that all of us are existing in this construct, right? This construct of the world, there's a million times in a day where your whole soul tell you that this shit ain't correct.
Yes, it do. In your body too.
Listen, everything. But here's the thing though, right? Everybody else seem to be okay with it.
Yes,
look around.
Yes.
And so you realize, well,
maybe it's me.
But see, and so of course now you realize it. Well, let me. Okay, all right. But again, we have to get to that point where your soul knows what is true. Your soul knows what is real. And you get to a place where that paradigm, that lie, that illusion, we have so many names for the thing.
So many
it
things.
gets a point where the toll it's taking on you to stay there cannot be worth it.
It cannot.
It cannot be worth it. And I tell you, be crazy, be free, be in actual spirit, be at peace, be happy, be sexy, it has so many things to be except that, because that does not feel good. And I tell you, post-COVID, there's so many people that finally in that space where they realize that I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. You know why you can't do it anymore? Because you never should have been doing that shit.
You never should have.
Because as spiritual beings, right, that was never who we were.
That was never it.
Right? And I want to speak to the women in particular. See all the womb bearers on the world, right? This next cycle is a womb cycle. This next cycle is a reclamation cycle. Right? We coming back into the womb because all of us recognizing that there is that thing that deep down inside, behind the belly button inside of their space, that's starting to churn. It's starting to act up. It's starting to talk to you. You don't end up listening to Thea and Rene in a conversation like this if the churning wasn't happening. They were churning. And we